Would love to welcome you all to our final session of the day. So it's now time for our last session, Top Trends for the 2025 University Recruiting Season, led by our very own Dr. Chelsea Shine. Chelsea's a Senior Director of Research at Verisk Insights. Chelsea has a deep passion for training the next generation of business leaders, and in addition to her work with us at Verisk Insights, she is an award-winning instructor of negotiations and business ethics at the Wharton School of Business. With that, I will bring Chelsea up.
Thank you. So this is my 5th year ending our annual members meeting with a top trends presentation. And I have to admit I'm a little bit more nervous this year than in past. Usually I try to end with the theme of empowerment, excitement, optimism. And then when I went to study 2025 and the predictions, it just kind of was a little bit of a downer. So I'm kind of nervous because, usually I'm high energy, and it's just not the year of excitement. So I added an additional trend at the end for some lightheartedness. 2025, you're all. Let's brace ourselves. When I thought about what the top themes would be, the first one that came to mind is a continuation of one of the top themes of 2024, which is AI. And there's a lot of elements I could talk about within this session. I only have 20 minutes, so the themes I'm not talking about here are the themes of how can we integrate AI into our own recruiting process. I have ChatGPT on my phone. I use it 5 to 10 times a day. If you're not integrating ChatGPT as your personal intern now, you're missing out. And I'm happy to talk offline about how I use ChatGPT personally as well as professionally. It's a game changer. The other major theme I might only hint about is that we're doing consistent work right now on how to recruit AI machine learning talent. So my colleague, Dr. Ade Kim, is doing that research, and I'm excited to have that roll out in that new year. The topic I want to focus on now, though, for this talk is how students are using AI and the impact that's having on recruiting. So since 2023, we've been surveying roughly every month on the percentage of students who are using AI as part of the recruiting process. And what we are seeing now is roughly half of students are using some form of AI in the recruiting process. And we see that a little bit higher on tech talent. What does that mean exactly? So we also survey on where they're using it in the application process. We're seeing overwhelming use in the preparation stage. We're also seeing use in cover letters as well. Fewer students are using it for what I label as outright fraud. So usually you find under 10% of students, but that's not trivial. What students are actually using. So this on the right-hand side shows what platforms students are using. ChatGPT or other chatbots are going to be that #1 most used source of AI in the application process. But I want you to scroll way down to the bottom. And it's a small percentage, but it's one that you should take note. So 9% of students overall report using auto-apply bots. And I want to spend another second on that. So we released a report not too long ago called From Avalanche to Advantage, Tackling Gen AI's Impact on Recruiting. In that report, the research team went and we did a deep dive on what these auto-apply bots look like, how students are using them. So for example, you can see Simplify under those auto-apply category. I asked a student to just kind of show me his screen, how he was using Simplify. It's like, yeah, I could apply to 200 jobs in about an hour and a half. It was great. I'm like, okay, great for who? This is a tech student who's really enthusiastic to show me, but you're seeing now the other side. And I want to spend a little bit more of a moment on this application avalanche. I know Carter addressed it yesterday. This is what we were calling the ever-broadening funnel of the application. So I started working at Verisk Insights March 15th, 2020. So right at the kind of first day of the virtual, it was a great start date. At the time, there was chaos, obviously, but shortly after, there was this kind of embrace of the democratization of recruiting. Go back to 2021, the question at the time was, how do we broaden our pipeline? How do we reduce barriers for entry? So we saw a continuation and acceleration of the trend of removing GPAs from applications. We saw a democratization of school selection strategies. So that's when we swung really strong into a school agnostic approach and virtual first approach. And the theme then was, in this tight competition, how do we expand the funnel? The challenge is that then hit the 2023-2024 reality of ChatGPT and auto-apply, and suddenly we're hitting in this ChatGPT accelerant stage, which is where we are now. For many people, there's some niceness about that, because you can go to your stakeholders saying, hey, we 10x the number of applications. And that's good for the stakeholders. Those of us in this room know that that's difficult. Because now the challenge of 2025 isn't just how to deal with getting applications. The challenge is how do we identify those right candidates amongst that application avalanche? And I want to highlight one particular point here, which is kind of the convergence challenge. When students are using these auto-apply bots, when they're using ChatGPT to generate their resumes, to generate their cover letters, the resumes are going to start to look very similar. And I'm not sure if you're all experiencing that, but we've heard that in pockets, and that's going to be what we're going to see in 2025, which is the question of how can we find that right talent? It's not about volume, it's about quality. You also see here questions about fraud. We're starting to hear some consistent chatter about what do we do when we know that there's a candidate who's using AI in the process. Over the last 2 weeks, my team did a deep dive of trying to find policies that employers are using. Two that I want to call out that I think is really interesting, and we link it to our Insight Chatter in December. PwC actually has this beautiful policy guidelines online that dictates how candidates should be using AI and how maybe they shouldn't, or definitely shouldn't. The other interesting one is Canva situates their AI policy in their disability access language. So it says, hey, we know AI can increase accessibility. If you need it for accessibility reasons, talk to us via other forms, but don't use AI live. And those are linked in our Insight Chatter this month. I want to go one more step. So AI, the hope now is, can we use AI to help bring back in this application avalanche? I'm having more consistent conversations in the last few weeks about what type of assessments, whether that's cognitive or psychometric assessments, can we use to use some automated processes to start filtering down this application process. Briefly, I just want to say the other kind of theme is how to recruit AI talent. One take-home lesson that I want to kind of foreshadow is if you're trying to recruit that AI-level talent, some stakeholders are saying, hey, let's have early career teams. They should run this. At that elite level of AI talent, where we're talking about $600,000 salaries, the process looks much more similar to executive recruiting than earlier career. We interviewed a student, a current PhD candidate, who had personalized, or what he said was a personalized note from Mark Zuckerberg. This is not the same type of process. It's a difficult battle right now, and it's an interesting one and one we're diving into. All right, so scene one was AI. Some optimism here, some kind of dread. I choosing my words carefully for this section, so indulge me if I pause for a few moments. Politics is going to disrupt early career, and there's three key ways that I think is going to have the biggest impact. And this is a little bit of conjecture, but I'm okay with that. The first is an increased scrutiny on higher education. Within that, there's kind of three pillars, which I'm going to be watching very closely. The first is the impact on student loans. Oops. The Meet the Press interview from this past weekend suggested that maybe some of the student loans will be okay. I don't know. It's a space I'm going to watch. There's a lot of uncertainty there. The second is the question of HBCU funding. It's just a theme I want to watch. The third is based off of the last Trump administration. I'm going to be looking at the number of international students enrolled in higher education. We saw that dip between 2017 and 2020 before COVID. Based off of past data, it's reasonable to predict that might be a dip as well. And that kind of relates to that second broad dip, which is challenges to immigration. One of the pillars of the incoming administration is a strong restriction in immigration and immigration numbers. Again, on Sunday, there was some chatter that, DACA will be fine. The other major one is the question of H-1B visas. The third one, and the one I want to spend a little bit more time here, is the environment we're going to be entering into in 2025 as it relates to DEI. it's rare where I find data where my jaw just drops. I spend a lot of time in data. This is data I had my team run multiple times, and I personally ran it again because I wanted to make sure this was accurate. The light blue bar, this is from our employer benchmarking data that we collected end of November, December. So this is fresh data. We have not released the report yet. The light blue bar is the percentages of employers who say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a top priority for them going into 2025. When we did this survey back in 2022, looking into 2023, it was full unanimity. 94%, everyone is rallying around the same kind of agenda. And maybe that wasn't quite authentic at the time for corporations. Because what we're seeing is a strong pivot down, and still half of people are saying it's top priority. But anyone who's doing some sort of virtual signaling, they've jumped off. What we are seeing is so every other question we ask, typically we get around 50% members saying this is one of my top priorities. So it goes back into that general pool. I included in the dark blue bar, strengthening early career talent pipelines just to kind of show where DEI is not following. All right, so what's going on with the DEI space? There are 3 types of initiatives I think everyone in this room should be aware of. One is about legislation, the other is about lawsuits, and the third is about influencers, is probably how I frame it. If you're not familiar yet with American First Legal, you should be. It's Stephen Miller's passion project, who's now being empowered more. It's what American First Legal is. They have had lawsuits with a decent number of folks in this room. The second, I say legislation, Pride 2025 had an anti-woke agenda that was not hidden. It was a flagship part of that agenda. The third, does anyone know who this is an image of?
Yeah.
I think, so unless I mess up, this is Robbie Starbuck. I don't want you all to have to know this name. You might need to know this name. So what he does is he takes social media platforms and targets specific employers on their DEI initiatives, trying to target first employers that should have a more kind of conservative consumer base, and say, hey, how dare you have this type of initiatives, naming and shaming them. The goal is to create headaches. The goal is to be annoying, and it might be working. What I have here is a few employers who have, in the last 6 months, publicly released statements limiting the work of that their ERGs can do, limiting what the CEO is saying, hey, we're not going to be committed to DEI, we're going to be committed to empowering all employees. I said this wasn't going to be an optimistic one. I have some hints of optimism. I know there's deep commitment in this room. I know this is a space where we can now see bravery emerge. So some of our organizations who might be able to withstand lawsuits, I'm excited to see them go up against this. But I also am very cognizant that a lot of folks in this room are going to be hearing from compliance a lot this year to figure out how do we navigate this terrain. One of the things that we're trying to do to help this group is since August, we've been keeping what we're calling an early career legal tracker. So we're just kind of keeping note of what legislations are going through that could impact this room, as well as what lawsuits have deep relevance here. We have a political scientist on our team who's deeply embedded in this work, who kind of loves sharing some of these insights, and we're updated on a monthly basis. In terms of what folks in this room are doing in response to this backlash on DEI, we also asked in a recent benchmarking, what has your team done in light of the affirmative action ruling? So this was before the election. There were 3 kind of key themes that emerged there. One is a embrace of kind of slightly different hiring processes. So crafting new training for all interviewers, making sure that there's no visibility on the UC data. Another is saying, hey, we're still deeply committed to our DEI goals, but with a shift of affirmative action, with a shift in how we can market ourselves, we're relying a little bit more on partners. We're relying a little bit more potentially on conference strategies. And the third one, which is fairly common, is a shift in DEI language. So you see this in early insights programs, where in 2022, you saw programs saying, hey, This is an early insights program for Black African American students. Now those same programs are listed as, hey, this is a program for everyone. Black African American students are encouraged to apply. So this subtle shift to kind of go through compliance offices. I'm not confident that's going to work 2-3 years from now. There is signal now that federal offices that have shifted their DEI offices to under a different name are still being attacked. So clever renaming is a place to start. It's also a place I'm watching closely to see if that's going to be sufficient. With that, I want to kind of take a step back to kind of think, what's the market we're going to be entering in for 2025? What I have here is the Bureau of Labor Statistics JOLTS data. The marketing team made me to commit to talk by Friday. This is October data. November data was released Friday at 8 a.m. What you see here is actually fairly resilient stabilizing of the labor market. November's data looks very similar to this. The interesting headline story isn't overall labor market, because right now it's fairly stable, fairly resilient. The interesting narrative starts to appear when you look at industry-specific results. So on this slide, what I have marked is in the benchmarking that Jess was finished fielding, we asked you all, what do you predict for your hiring volume for 2025? And there was just an almost even distribution in this audience saying, yep, we're going to go forward, we're going to hire more versus it's staying stable versus we're decreasing. So the interesting is splitting by industry. You have some industries in this room who are saying the modal response, so this isn't going to be everyone in the industry, but I just plotted here what most folks in that industry said. So aerospace and defense, engineering, oil, gas, and energy, the majority of folks who took our survey said, yep, we're predicting increased hiring. Insurance and retail and logistics, some were increased hiring, some were kind of staying the same. Professional services was interesting because it was completely bimodal. Some were saying, yeah, we're going to hire a lot more. Others saying, this isn't the year, we still are dealing with delayed start dates, et cetera. That's likely a function of what type of consulting they are doing. Technology as well, we saw that kind of bimodal distribution, with some really aggressively expanding and other tech companies still in this contraction stage. So again, the interesting trend is going to be at that industry level, how that's going to impact labor demand. On the flip side is the question of supply. College enrollment has been decreasing, and it's not just a function of COVID. We saw this starting in 2017. There's been a little bit of an uptick recently in total number of college students, but the latest National Clearing Student House data suggests that 18-year-old new college enrollees, that number has decreased. And there's two impetus for that decrease. I'm not sure if any of you had high school seniors last spring, but if you did, you might be very intimately aware that FAFSA had a huge bumble in the spring semester. So a lot of 18-year-olds, so new college students, weren't able to enroll in time because FAFSA was a mess this last season. And we're seeing that in that data where freshman enrollment had decreased slightly. The second is the affirmative action enrolling and the impact that's having. So we didn't want to wait for the National Student Clearinghouse data to give the predicted data. So I had a team member scroll through about 30 universities to see who released their enrollment trends earlier. And we have about 27 schools online that we have in our college enrollment post-affirmative action tracker. A majority of those schools are reporting a decrease in Black African American and Hispanic Latinx recruiting. So I believe Johns Hopkins, I think it was 8.1 percentage point decrease in Black African American enrollment. I said it was going to be optimistic talk, right? With this background in mind, the point I want to leave on is the point about back to fundamentals. This is a challenging year we're entering into. And at the end of the day, the fundamentals of university recruiting, early career space, remain the same. We're still going out to campus. We are doing some virtual approach to establish a strong campus brand, to figure out how to invest our resources most effectively. A lot of folks here are focused on improving candidate experience. We're trying to help our teams as stakeholders understand future talent need. We're trying to maintain the best-in-class programming, and we're trying to make sure they start day one. The optimistic part at the end, so I asked my team, I need something a little bit more positive to end on. So we took the questions you all gave us for Monday night, the word cloud. Fundamentally, university recruiting remains about relationship building. It remains about connecting people and launching careers. Going into 2025, the superpower we're all going to need: flexibility, agility, agile. This is the right team. Together, we have this group. This can be a really strong year, and I'm excited to help build that with you all. Thank you. With that, I want to invite Carter Bradley back to the stage.
Okay. Thank you, Chelsea. Okay, I have a couple quick thank yous, and then one final note, and then that's a wrap. So first, I just wanted to start the final session here where we started the first session. Can we just do one more round of applause for all of our first-time attendees at the annual? I can't tell you how thrilled I am that you're here, and I hope that we can be welcoming you back as second-year annual members meeting attendees next year. As you can see, the social events in the evenings just kind of keep getting better and better. Second, I want to do a big thank you to our presenters. So Chelsea, Catherine, and Jacinta, excellent work. Thank you all. And then to our panelists from earlier today, I see a couple of them, but Scott, Maura, and Carly, thank you to all three of you as well. Then finally, Nicole, Corey, and Angie, our absolutely wonderful events team. Thank you all for these last 2 days. You know, I have to say, the events team has told me this, I have seen this as well, that you all are among the people that we most would want to produce events for, because you actually really appreciate what it means to pull off a good event. You know how great it is when there aren't snafus, you know what happens when there are snafus, and you know what it means to try to pull off something great. So I hope you enjoyed this. I have one final note on content. We've been talking a lot among our leadership team, among other members of the team, about what we should focus on for next year. And we're feeling really bullish about tackling some big issues. Chelsea talked about a few of them. We talked about a few of them yesterday. And there are some more that we would predict will be big ones for next year. AI, as Chelsea was talking about, is going to be a big topic. We're just getting into publishing some work on how you all can be competitive with AI talent. And also, from an integration standpoint, we're seeing next year as likely the year where we're going to start putting out a lot of work on the proven ways you might be able to get some ROI from AI in your own efforts. We actually have a research initiative launched on this right now, and the leaders of that initiative told me yesterday that we actually already have 150 verified practices from leaders in experienced recruiting and in university recruiting of ways they've leveraged AI in their efforts to positive ROI already. But beyond that, we're expecting to see a lot of additional work in workforce planning changes, in demand planning changes, in team organization and structure, in global organization and structure, et cetera. These are some of the things that we've been hearing that we think will be some of the defining issues for next year, and we are feeling really eager to start tackling some of them along with you. But I wanted to do my one final note, which is often where I end this meeting, which is that all of this is done based on your impetus. So whatever you tell us to study, that is what we study. Whatever you tell us to work on, that is what we work on. Our whole goal with all of this is to serve you in all of your hardest work. So throughout the year, but especially at the beginning of the year, I hope that you'll tell anyone and everyone on the Verus team that you're in touch with what you're most working on, what you'd be interested in us studying, how we can better serve you, so that we can continue to design our agenda around that. But with that, I hope you had a wonderful 2 days. It is a total privilege for us to get to host you here yesterday and today. So thank you all again.